This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's a fantastic Friday edition. It is July 26, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, my son Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information, and analysis of the same, unlike anywhere else you might tune into. I'm very proud to say for our second hour, we're going to be joined by a very special guest, Sheila Matthews. She's been a guest on Fox, on CNN. She's been written up in Time magazine and other various publications nationally and internationally. She is the head of, co-founder of something called ablechild.org. Some very interesting news we're going to be talking about during the second hour. For new listeners, folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us at our home base on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. And I want to thank every one of you for joining us. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your support as well. And thank you for your letters of encouragement, your letters that we've received. I've read each and every one of them. Boy, I'll tell you, there's so many, and I'm trying to respond to as many. And actually, anyone who's left an address, I'm trying to respond back to everyone to thank you for sharing the information you have and for your support, and it's just incredible. I've got to tell you. Now, we are okay. We do have Joe. Can you hear me? Are you muted or?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Joe, you sound a little bit
can you hear me?
like. Yeah, I can. I don't know. Can
How's
you adjust?
Is this better?
That much better. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
Mike too close to the face.
All right. Well, yeah. You know, we've got a lot of news to cover tonight before our guest comes on in the second hour. And one of the things that caught my eye today is the militarization of America. And this is for cause. This is for good reason. As I was doing errands today, I had heard on the news, and this is something that I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I almost took my car and ran into a bridge abutment. Consumer confidence is at a record high. That people who believe the economy is in a recovery mode is at an all-time high, as high as it was back in 2007. Figures range like 87% of the nation's population, or those polled, I should say, believe that the economy is getting better, things are getting better overall. And I thought, wow, who are they asking? Because, ladies and gentlemen, you know, and I know, we all know, that things are not getting better. They're actually getting worse. And to cover up just how bad things are, the numbers are being fudged. You know that. We know that. Any numbers that come out, they're fudging the numbers. So, and once again, I mentioned this yesterday. Right now we're borrowing just to sustain ourselves. And think about this: $200 million per hour is what the United States government is borrowing to tread water to keep this economy afloat. How in the world can you, Joe? Explain to me, Joe.
Well, a story here from last month, a month ago tomorrow. Federal regulations cut standard of living by 75% over 56 years. And this is,
wow.
It says the 28th annual snapshot of the Federal Regulatory State published by Competitive Enterprises Institute last month announced the arrival of an unhappy milestone. Regulatory costs now equal more than half of all federal spending. Regulatory costs. Policing things that they have no business policing, staffing those positions, the man hours that are paid for that go into those investigations or whatever you'll call them. Look at the NSA. If what Snowden said was true, he was making a ton of money for only being there for a few months, and if that's what these contractors make at the beginning, I can't imagine how much they make, when they get higher up in their career.
Well, of course. Now, that brings up a whole separate issue where even now, and I want to thank Marianne for sending this as well to me, the United Nations is mulling the use of private security groups. Apparently, it's worked so well here in the United States, these private security groups, that the United Nations is going to be considering using private security groups. This is a big deal, by the way. Now,
like Blackwater, the defense contracting, mercenary groups.
It's all about the contractors, and this is something that it's so important, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not being discussed.
Why is it important? Why is it different than regular military personnel? And I do know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear how you explain it.
Well, very simply, three different ways. Number one, the oversight. Number two, the profit. And third, the oversight. Yes, of course, I know I said that twice, but the contractors, the subcontractors or contractors or non-governmental entities, if you will, organizations. Yeah. Do you have something different, or?
Well, no. I just wanted to add that that's exactly it. These are not part of the U.S. military. Therefore, they are not under the same oath or the same policies or rules as you alluded to with the regulations and oversight. They don't have that chain of command, really. They are. Yeah.
That's right. Number three could have been allegiance, because which you're bringing up here is allegiance. Yes, I agree that there's no specific oath to the Constitution. Now, arguably, in some cases, they'll say, "Oh, well, we took an oath," but it's different. It's a different venue. It's a whole different. But it's these. Don't forget we play the clip from MacArthur. Did MacArthur not warn about the military-industrial complex? It's also the political military-industrial complex.
MacArthur or Eisenhower?
I'm sorry, Eisenhower. What am I saying MacArthur for? Okay. Wow.
No, I was just wondering. I didn't know.
No, thank you for it's Eisenhower. The former President Eisenhower said, warned about the military-industrial complex, but it's the political military-industrial complex as well. But this urban warfare training is being done right now for a reason, and the reason goes back to the opening of the program, where mentioning about consumer confidence, the highest level it's been since 2007. Well, guess what? The 87% polled thinking that things are going a lot better and things are just swimmingly well, going just very well. They're going to be in the shock of their lives. I had a conversation today with somebody. Joe, I got to tell you this. I had a conversation with somebody today, very close to me. And I said, look, I just found out some information, and I want to get your take on it. And it was a female. And she said, well, what is it? And I said, just tell me what you think of this, that we're borrowing $200 million an hour just to tread water, and that essentially the big, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, trying to capsulize a pretty lengthy conversation down to just a minute here, but I had mentioned that the devaluation of our currency, the devaluation of our dollar, and how we've lost 97% of our wealth essentially, and our situation is extremely precarious, and the debt, the fact that right now the United States government, we really, in theory, we can't go broke because we can still print money because we're the world's reserve currency, and this is something people don't quite understand. Because the United States is the world's reserve currency, that gives us the ability we don't have to be accountable, or the accountability is less. But once we lose that standing, see, America is the only country in the world that does not have to pay for its imports, let's say, in a foreign country. Just
import tax.
Import
taxes or tariffs.
Right. Or yeah, exactly. But the bottom line is this. Mathematically, we are going down the tubes in a very quick way. The wages of our economic sins must be paid for, and we have yet to pay for those. And that day is coming. The day of reckoning is coming. So,
and the collateral on that debt is the resources, the land, the people.
Exactly. And anyway, this person just kind of said, I really don't want to hear it. Things are going well, and I really don't want to hear it. And I said, fine, that's fine. But what's your take, actually? What is your take on I asked her what her take was on the fact that, the United States could lose the world's reserve currency status. And she said, we'll be fine. The government will take care of everything. And I think that's meaning the Treasury Department. And I think that's perhaps the way people think today, that it's not going to, it can't happen here. Yeah, exactly. Well, but
just another debt ceiling limit that needs to be voted on, just a few more $1 trillion added to the debt.
Exactly.
That's all.
And that's the other thing too, Joe. The Guerrilla Economist V is going to be on with Steve Quayle on Monday. We're going to be talking about this very issue and how really close we are to that day of reckoning.
Look at how fast we've come to where we are. What was the second Bush national debt level at the end of his first term? It was Bush 2. Do you know?
You know what? I don't have the figures in front of me, but I can tell you this, that if you add everything together, including the unfunded liabilities, the federal obligations that exist now, our total debt figure exceeds $20 trillion. And more than half of that was assumed and compiled, assumed under Obama, on Obama's watch. Wow, it's incredible. So Joe, when you come up with the figures, let me know. But so what is this that we're hearing about the urban warfare training and militarization? Why? Well, when everything does collapse, we're going to need, or there will be a need for martial law to handle the blowback. And this week's deployment of Black Hawk helicopters in Chicago, this is only the latest in a series of urban warfare training exercises that's become a very familiar feature across the American landscape.
Here, I got some statistics.
All right.
I didn't mean to jump in and interrupt here. President Bush in 8 years added $4.9 trillion to the debt. August 23rd, 2012, under Obama, $5.3 trillion added in the first 3.5 years.
So he doubled.
$5.3 trillion in 3.5 years versus $4.9 trillion in 8 years. Now, $4.9 trillion is nothing to sneeze at. That's a huge amount of debt.
Of course.
That started us on this path.
Well, we've been on this path, I think, since 1965, and then, of course, August 15th, which is the anniversary is coming up, August 15th of 71. Right. But don't forget, August 15th, 1971, Nixon took us off, detached the dollar, took us off the gold standard, and of course that was done, at the insistence or at with the consultation of the CFR members around him, the Trilateral Commission, future members of the Trilateral Commission, which wasn't formed yet, I don't believe, at that time. I think that was in the workings at that time. But nonetheless, the very people who are in power today were the ones making those decisions back then, and we are going to hit this brick wall. So how do we deal with this, or how's the government dealing with this? You look out your window from your Chicago office building and watch the urban warfare training exercises, because isn't it true that they train where they fight, or they fight where they train, or vice versa? I mean, isn't it true that the military...
we talked about last night.
That's right.
What is happening. And there's more... let me pull up the stories from last night, because there's a few things that we missed that were really important that we needed to get into. And I got the document right here. There were stories about the militarization in Africa. What was going on there. And it was something along the lines of President Obama's division of Africa, get Africans to kill Africans. let's see. Okay, maybe it wasn't yesterday. Maybe it was the day before.
We are meddling.
But
we're exporting this whole policy of. But this Africa is extremely important for a lot of reasons. But if you have that, go ahead. If you've got it in front of you. If not, I'll just tell you this.
Yeah, I'm looking here.
Okay.
Yesterday's, 2 days ago, headlines. Here it is. U.S. South Africa War Games. The Pentagon's hidden agenda to make Africans fight Africans. Yeah, and I'll get into this. Also, scores killed in Guinea. Let me get back here. Scores killed in Guinea ethnic violence. This is from AlJazeera.com, a news out of Africa, that many are being ethnically cleansed or murdered because of their ethnicity in Guinea, Africa.
Well, what they're doing is this. Yeah, and here's what we have to really, I think it's important for people to realize. We're seeing this regime, the Obama regime, stir up racial tensions, racial rioting, or attempting to do that here domestically. This regime is exporting that very same policy to other countries in the form of ethnic type sectarian violence, if you will. So what's taking place in Africa especially is a focal point of this administration's handling. And I got to tell you, it's not, these war games, these U.S. South Africa war games, is this or is this not the hidden agenda to make Africans fight Africans? Indeed it is. And there's so many officials say, well, look at the Republic of South Africa, who is slated to participate in the U.S. NATO-sponsored humanitarian interventions directed against other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. These have been tagged. These nations have been tagged by Washington as unstable nations.
The 35 drone bases in Africa that we've put out there, and it goes on to say the Pentagon the Pentagon is involved in organizing war games in a different part of the world. The stated military mandate is a national security and the global war on terrorism. South African media has reported the holding of military exercises involving the U.S. military and South African National Defense Force. The South African and U.S. Armed Forces are to conduct war games in the Eastern Cape over a period of almost 2 weeks, July 24th to August 5th. The joint war games are to be coordinated by USA AFRICOM, U.S. Army Africa Contingency Command. SA Navy Captain Jacko Louisen said the militaries would share technical expertise during the exercise, which would start on July 24th, so 2 days ago, and end on August 5th, and would involve 5,000 soldiers. We're exercising to do a human support intervention in an unstable country, said Suzanne. What we simulate is what is currently happening in a lot of countries in the world, especially in the African continent. You've got warring factions destabilizing the country. We are exercising the war fight, where you will fight against rebel groups. And then the article goes on to explain the U.S. NATO involvement, the humanitarian interventions that lead to genocide and murder.
Well,
refers to the United Nations as the unstable nations.
Right, and the South African National Defense Force, or SANDF, is we have to pay attention to.
Is this a militia group?
No, it's the goodness. SANDF is the coalition. I'm sorry, I was reaching for that word there. The South African National Coalition. And some of the training in which SANDF participated included basic command and control of a multinational exercise. So what we're seeing here, in particular with South Africa, is the globalization by force. And of course they're saying, well, this is because of humanitarian reasons. Well, it's not. It's actually you're creating a Hegelian dialectic, like we talked about last night with Dave Hodges. in a different context, however. But you're creating the environment to create this instability, and therefore we'll come in under the pretext of humanitarian aid and hit this. But if we would take this back, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead and finish your thought.
Well, so what we're doing is we're exporting the same thing that we're doing here in the U.S. And I think what we're doing here in the U.S. is extremely important because, fine, AFRICOM and that whole deal over there, of course, that's the expansion for global objectives. Over here, it's control and conditioning of the American people. When the Army operates a 1,000-acre urban training center in south central Indiana. Now think about this, folks. The United States Army has a 1,000-acre urban training center in south central Indiana. It has over 1,500 training structures. It's like it's like a Hollywood set. It's designed to stimulate houses, schools, hospitals, factories, and the center's. By the way, it's on the internet too. You can see it. It states that the website itself, the mission statement states that it can be tailored to replicate both foreign and domestic scenarios. Do you think, ladies and gentlemen, we should be concerned about what's going on in Chicago? What does flying Blackhawks low over Chicago apartment buildings or rolling their armored military convoys through the streets of St. Louis, what does this accomplish that can't be achieved through that training center, that 1,000-acre urban training center? Why are we doing this on the streets of Chicago, on the streets of St. Louis?
They're testing fuel. They're testing the new fuel, probably the E15 that was coming out, that most car manufacturers said that they would not put warranties out for people who use E15 ethanol 15 gas. So they're probably just testing the fuel to make sure that it runs properly in their machinery.
Can you imagine, by the way, being at the local 7-Eleven and having a tank pull up or an armored vehicle pull up next to you with armored troops? Imagine it, because it's going to be taking place. Last year alone, folks, there were 7 known exercises that took place in urban areas: Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, Tampa, St. Louis, Minneapolis, and also in a town in Virginia. So the obvious right now, they could be training in this urban training center, but they're out in the streets of populated areas. Why? Well, they're desensitizing the American people to the domestic deployment of U.S. military might. Now, but why are they doing this, Joe? What are they preparing for? Is this for a benevolent act?
You talked about the destabilization efforts, and here, I don't know if you saw this, there was a report issued by the IMF. IMF economist says the economic recovery is a fake. Yet another leaked report this time tells something we have suspected for a long time, not only concerning the IMF's underhand, plausible denial way of communicating bad news. The story starts with an internal IMF report called Confidential, which was leaked to a Wall Street Journal contributor. This is now standard practice for the IMF, growing rapidly and easy to trace back its handling or mishandling of European bailouts, starting with Greece. One example is the report, and I'll put a link in the chat here for the story, where the IMF concedes it made mistakes. Original leakage of this report generated mini crisis among EU 27 financial ministers, including harsh words from Economics Commissioner Olli Rehn. The basic cause of the dispute is always traceable to 2 things: the IMF's bad habit of overestimating economic recovery, and who pays for what the next or present bailout. That last one. Who pays what for the next or present bailout?
Right. Because the IMF, as the global financial entity, if you will, calling the shots, they know that the dollar as the world reserve currency our days are numbered. Folks, this is what all of this is about, at least in my view. Partially, I mean, they've got to create some sort of they've got to prepare for what is coming, the blowback, because when you are unable to use the ATMs, when there's food supply, when that gets interrupted, there's nothing at the grocery stores. And the people who have not prepared are now going to go out and they're hungry, so they're going to go out to their neighbors and you saw what happened in Washington. I don't know how many people saw this rioting or this I'm not even sure what they call this spontaneous group riot, or if you will, or this group of young black people in a grocery store, like a corner grocery market in Washington D.C.
You just gave me a good idea for a show.
Took everything out
for a show topic, but go ahead.
No, it was a spontaneous riot where you had. In fact, you can find the YouTube or the video on YouTube, I believe. But it was reported in Washington D.C. last week. I think it was last weekend, where there was a case of wilding, I think they called it, where this group of young black I don't know, there must have been a dozen or so young people.
You're talking about the gangs of people that go into shopping centers or stores and mass raid and rob these places?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, the mob, I forget what they're called, something about, mobbing.
It was a flash mob, yeah. But the fact is they cleaned out the store in a matter of seconds, and they hit the store owner or manager with a pointed stick, like one of the stakes you drive into the ground. It was unbelievable. So, and these weren't hungry people, or they didn't appear to be hungry, or they didn't appear to be, just robbing because they were hungry. This is just a flash mob. So this mentality has been cultivated by this regime, and in fact, it's been cultivated by the numerous administrations over the years. In particular, since the Great Society back of the Johnson years, and we've been preparing for this, or this has been in the works for now the better part of a half a century, if not longer. And so we're looking at these training exercises as what I believe, when the dollar does collapse, or when I should say when the dollar is killed and the U.S. is no longer the world reserve currency. This is what's going to take place. Everything's going to stop. Life as we know it is going to stop. Now, that doesn't mean the sky's falling, Joe. It doesn't mean that the the world.
I wanted to ask you in your history, as you are older than me, obviously.
Obviously.
Have you ever seen the military drills being done in a city? Even one case? Do you remember? Before 5 years ago.
No, not one time, not ever. Now I lived through. Now I will say we had the National Guard, and folks remember this: the National Guard at Kent State. Obviously, there was a song written about it, and of course that situation was really a horrific situation. Kent State back in the 70s. We've had isolated situations where the Watts riots in Los Angeles took place in the 60s. But as a matter of routine, and in particular where you've got the militarized police or the military itself training in urban areas, no, populated urban areas. What would happen, Joe, if one of those tanks or helicopters, what would happen? Do people not understand that there's a risk involved with live training exercises in urban areas? What would happen if a helicopter struck an office complex and went down in the middle of the street, killing, however many?
Well, yeah, I couldn't even think of that. Killing. I mean, just doing these exercises. Imagine us being in our city, our small city, and maybe we heard about it, and in most cases, it seems like these people did not hear about it before the fact. So imagine us going to a bookstore, or, something we would go to, running errands when we need to, and all of a sudden you see these tanks and helicopters flying. I mean, you'd think something was just really wrong. You'd be you'd be asking yourself, am I safe? It would definitely raise some thoughts into your mind, and it would hopefully not get your emotions going, but it's very worrisome to know that you could just look up and see these combat helicopters with people inside of them holding, machine guns, and just flying around very low to the ground, having these humongous tank-like truck reptoid hybrid. I don't even know what you'd call these Homeland Security trucks. We have one here in Erie, and they have in the front end it's like shaped into a V. It is very mean looking, like it has teeth almost, but it's like a tank without the wheels and the big gun.
Well, exactly. And we are looking at something, the rising domestic power of the military. I don't know how else to describe it. And I've never seen this as long as I've been walking this earth. As a child, we've never seen any of this. But the book, The Rise of the Warrior Cop, the military or the militarization of America's police forces. Folks, if you have a chance, go to your library and check that book out. Or I believe it's been released now. It's a book by Radley Balko, and it was just published, and it's a fantastic book, and it goes through right from the very start right from the very start of our country as to what police, what the responsibilities of police are, and so on. So I look, this whole everything we're seeing, people report this. They report about the ammunition being sold, and they report to the government and these contracts of ammunition. They report about the shortages of rifles, but a lot of times there's a disconnect. Well, why is this taking place? Well, the reason is, I believe, and I think through research, I think together we've kind of come at a couple of different scenarios, but at the epicenter of this is going to be the economic calamity that will befall us. That's what I'm very concerned with. And now we're exporting that militarization as well to other countries, including South Africa. And that South Africa story, we could probably do a entire show on AFRICOM and what we're doing there. But I think it's important for people to really realize what's going on. Yes.
We're centralizing power in Africa, in the Middle East, in the places that we can. Consolidating power, I should say. And
yeah, but you know something, Joe? No, I just want to say this. What we're seeing as well, there are processes that are taking place, two different processes side by side. One is this immense, deepening rift, widening social chasm that is separating the haves, the boy, I've got everything, the billionaires and multimillionaires and gazillionaires or whatever, the people with a lot of money versus, and by the way, those people, they control the economic and political life of every American, of the American working class. It's those people who control the American working class. So, in the great majority versus the great majority of the population. So that's one process that we're seeing. At the same time, the turn to this militarization process as the real instrument of our foreign policy has vastly increased the power of the military within the U.S. state apparatus. I'm not sure if you followed me on that, but you've got America's domestic ruling oligarchy and the Pentagon command. They recognize that that profound social polarization and deepening economic crisis will result in social upheavals, and I believe that they are preparing accordingly. So you've got these parallel events taking place. So I think what we need to understand, when we see a helicopter fly in downtown Los Angeles or downtown Chicago, I think it's important for us to realize why they're doing it, aside from the desensitization or conditioning process of Americans. Once again, you've got the widening rift between the billionaires, who control the economic and political life, who've wrestled really control from the American working class, the great majority of the population. And we know that this is fundamentally incompatible with the constitutional republic, and requires other forms of rule. And this is what we're seeing. At the same time, the turn to this militarization of the police and everything else that we're seeing as the principal instrument of U.S. foreign policy, it's been vastly increased. And the power of the military within the U.S. is growing. It's unprecedented. So we need. I believe, Joe, we need to understand exactly what we're seeing here, and why. And I think the why lies in the economic time bomb we're sitting on. So that's kind of my thoughts.
I would say the economic is a what would you call it? A necessity as to a part of their new world agenda. It's one part. It is a big part, but it is just one piece of a few pieces that go together.
Wouldn't that be the framework, though, or architecture? Because if you control the money, you control power. Yeah. Okay. But what would be the other factor or factors involved in this?
Well, when we're talking about the New World Order, the one world government, we're talking about the establishment of the satanic government on earth. So you're talking about the false prophet, a false form of religion, worshiping a false god. You're talking about the complete and total extermination of anybody who believes in Jesus or the attempt thereof.
Yep.
And that's part of the religious aspect. So you have religion, economic, and you have to have these peace deals. The United Nations globalization and centralization of all the countries.
But domestically, Joe, what's the one common factor, regardless of religious beliefs, theology, ideology, as people are walking around, whether it's the streets of New York, the streets of Miami, or the streets of Los Angeles, what's the one common factor with all of the people, the working class, the lower class? What's the one common factor? When I say lower class, I don't mean anything except for.
Well, you're talking about the economy, but
right, it's the money in their pocket.
The distribution of wealth and the chain of that wealth based on different places of employment or no employment, or all the things that go into
everyone's walking around
economy.
with U.S. dollars. Yes, everyone in the streets of America are walking around with U.S. dollars. That's the common element.
This is something we talked about. Yeah, this is something we talked about with the guest yesterday, and Mr. Dave Hodges. And something that we talked about is, what if there is a plan in place, and I'm pretty sure we know that this is true. There is already a new economic system that has been put together. From what I understand, the people who own it or run it have been selected or chosen, and there might not be the need for an economic collapse to bring in this global economic system. Now imagine something we talked about last night also.
Stop, hold on, because I want to stop it for a second, because I want to know, mathematically, it's a mathematical certainty. We cannot keep this the Fed, the fiat currency can't withstand much more. We cannot. Soon the money is going to run out, and so how would we avoid that in your example here, or in your postulation? How would we avoid that?
Well, the collapse end?
Yeah. How would we not? How would this?
There would have to be go back to Ronald Reagan's speech to the UN in, what was it, 1980? where he talked about uniting the globe and the countries and the citizens, gathering them together, not divided by racial lines anymore. And this goes to the theme of Independence Day. But Ronald Reagan stated that that if there was only some kind of alien threat, that it would unite humanity and bring peace throughout humanity, realizing that we are all the same, and also that there are other beings out there, which we already know that there are. What they're called, obviously, is not, or referred to as, is not the truth. But Ronald Reagan.
What you're saying is the unification of from.
Yeah. So say there's a fake alien invasion or landing, and it is the the Antichrist spirit or the false prophet, as it says in the Bible. It's going to do marvelous wonders, miracles, healing people. It says, who is like unto the beast, who can make war with the beast, referring to that it might not be hideous and kind of like how we see what Obama's and Bush's actions are versus how they talk when they address the public. You know what I mean? They will appear to be perfect, charismatic, whatever, however that is perceived, that perfectness, and people will worship that.
Well, I agree that will be an eventuality. I believe that's going to be part of the big deception, but I don't think it's going to be a catalyst for what we're seeing, though. Well,
listen, this is what and this is just a possibility from putting together bits and pieces of research and information that's been gathered. What if, let's say, something like that happened, something like what Ronald Reagan referenced, happened in 2 weeks? Could you see the economy changing without having it collapse?
No. Honestly, no.
Okay.
I could not, because how would that possibly affect?
In the Bible, it says that the nations were perplexed. The people were so deceived. So whatever will happen could be a life-changing thing in an instant. I mean, if we're referring to this. And at that time, as we talked about in that parable of Matthew 13, any prior knowledge of the word of the Lord some people had, if they're not rooted in the Lord, will disappear.
But once again, when we speak to the economic system, it doesn't. These are two separate things. You're looking at the overall larger picture, which I agree that there's going to be a grand deception. However,
and what the Bible says also about this time, about how God will send a delusion among the wise of their own wisdom, the human wisdom, the scientists, the philosophers, that those specifically are named. But that he will confound the wise. He will, continue to blind them, like he hardened the Pharaoh's heart when the Israelites were leaving Egypt.
Right.
He can
and I understand
that veil over. So people, we can't really understand what we might see for certain situations, or a New Madrid collapse. I can see that turning into complete anarchy very fast. Whereas the other situation we were just referencing would seem more like people would be so, you see how people pay attention to their TVs and to their phones more than anything. Just imagine them paying attention to something real and tangible that is pretending to be a god. It's what all the New Age things teach about. It's what a lot of different denominations teach about. So, I mean, I'm just saying that is the way I've been looking at things recently. So when I think about an economic collapse, I'm not thinking about it the way I used to think about it in the majority of the time. But I do understand what you're saying, that there could be something, a bank holiday, a bank run, something that could trigger a store shelf cleaning out event where nothing is available, no supply chain from food, from supplier to consumer would be there, and people would have to rely on what they have and what they were able to create. Which brings me to the next point. What I said is you gave me an idea for a show. There are excellent things and ways to survive by eating things that are all around us in nature. Simple things, plant oils, different seeds.
Of course,
we should do part of a show. We should get maybe Holidale or somebody else who can talk on this and talk about very practical, self-sustaining methods of staying alive in, basic wooded areas, per se.
Well,
because there's a lot there.
That's fine. We do need we need the fine arts of preparation, I think. And folks, by the way, if you haven't visited standeo.com, that's DEYO, standeo.com. If you go on if you look at the tabs on their website, there's a preparation tab on the upper left, or preps, I believe it is, on the upper left hand, top left hand side of their website. Holidale wrote the book Dare to Prepare, but if you go to that tab, all down the left-hand column are resources, information, white papers, PDF files, free of charge. I mean, she's put a whole lot of work into this, where you can get this information without having to purchase books or CDs or DVDs or whatever. This is like a gift to everybody. And what you're saying about how to survive in the wild, for example, I believe that there's even a section on plants that are edible versus non-edible, plants that will kill you.
In the wild. Just
in your backyard.
Our surroundings. I mean, right.
But getting back to what we were talking about, though, Joe, I don't think we need to go that far. Really, I don't think we need to go that far into the outer banks of conversation when we're looking at the militarization process of what we're seeing. Because I think we've got plenty of fodder right here for the collapse.
Think about this. We see what the news shows us. We see that the appearance of wars and rumors of wars. Well, we know that there are some wars, but more than not, often than not, there are the appearance of rumors of wars, people against people, nations against nations, and more often than not, they are all consolidated. So the thought of, there are a few individual nations left that are not part of this global caliphate. The caliphate isn't the proper word, but global takeover.
We'll say this global consortium. Right.
Russia,
I get that.
Europe, and I forget where I was going with that, but that global consolidation has encompassed most of the nations, and the nations that haven't gone along with it, their leaders have been taken out and murdered in the streets, and we see this happening in Syria. And obviously Iran is one of those countries. That's why we see in North Korea, why we see so much news on, North Korea to launch nuclear bomb at, United States, North Korea to do nuclear launch tests. And is this more a distraction? As we say, most news, we're coming to the conclusion that most news is a distraction. Is these rumors of wars a distraction to actual cooperation for something else?
Well, all I can tell you is we look at what we're seeing right now, and this, by the way, is I'm quoting from the Rise of the Warrior Cop, the book itself, driven by martial rhetoric and the availability of military-style equipment, from bayonets and M16 rifles to armored personnel carriers. American police forces have often adopted a mindset previously reserved for the battlefield. Now, okay, that speaks to something taking place domestically here. And then it does state, the author states, the war on drugs and more recently post-9/11 anti-terrorism efforts have created a new figure on the U.S. scene, which is the warrior cop, armed to the teeth, ready to deal harshly with targeted wrongdoers and a growing threat to to familiar American liberties. So this is what we're seeing with our own two eyes right now out there as we see these helicopters and everything flying through our urban areas when they could, in fact, be practicing at their 1,000-acre mini Hollywood set urban training center. Why are they doing this in the streets of populated areas, especially when the risk, I mean, imagine a Black Hawk striking a building, an office building, like I said, during the day. Or imagine some sort of training accident, and we know accidents do happen. Why are they taking the risk? Why are they taking this risk when the risk doesn't have to be? That's a problem to me. So I don't think we have to look toward these, although the deception which you're talking about is there. I think the immediate problem or the immediate concern is what happens when that 87% of those 87% polled who think that everything is just great with the economy, when they say, or when they're suddenly told, wait a second, you're going to have a financial haircut. You're not going to be able to get your money out. By the way, the pension you thought you had, by the way, you don't have it. That's going to be a problem. And the food supply chain is interrupted. Or you can't get gas for your vehicles. Or if there is gas, you're not able to afford it because of the devaluation of the currency. This is what I'm looking at. And I think that we really, which is why Monday is going to be so critical of a program with the Guerrilla Economist on Monday and Steve. Folks, you've got to tune into that program on Monday because this is one of the issues. This is one of the areas that I asked the V to please get into, the relationship between this militarization of American police forces and the global economy. But what will happen here domestically once the U.S. dollar is no longer the world reserve currency? That's what I'm concerned with. Now, what you're talking about, Joe, and again, I'm not discounting what you're saying. I'm just saying that you're going 2 or 3 steps further, and I think that will happen. But I don't think it's going to be the causative factor of what's going to take place right away. Now, do you feel that, I mean, is your instinct based on your research? And I'll flat out ask you, do you feel that could precede an economic takedown?
I'm saying it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Now, there are a few reasons why I say this. One is the timing that we are in. We're coming upon the end of the second half of the year, and the new age of Aquarius starts after the end of this year, from what I understand. And this is what David Spangler referred to when he said no one would be able to enter the new age unless he or she takes a Luciferian initiation.
Okay, now what does that mean, though? Does that mean that initiation, is that the mark of the beast, or is that some sort of, I would say, yes, blood oath of
the
clubs?
Luciferian initiation? No, taking a Luciferian initiation is the mark of the beast. I would say, in a form of the mark of the beast. I'm sure there are. I don't understand fully what the mark of the beast is, and I don't think many of us really will until we can see it for our own eyes and all the different ways it works. Because we know that you don't necessarily have to have a mark on you. You could worship the image, or there's another reference to something there that talks about this in the Bible. And that's essentially the same thing as having the mark.
Well, essentially the same thing in having the mark, I believe, are worlds apart, because according to what I read,
I'll get the scripture here for you.
But is it not? See, what I believe, I guess, what I believe isn't really important. But based on my research, the beast system is an infrastructure. It's already set up, and anything that takes you from a person, from a name, from, you know how the Bible says God knows your name, for example. But when you take that and you devalue the person, the humanity, and make the person into a number as opposed to a name, isn't this what we see happening today? And I believe that's the infrastructure to what you're referring to. But it's my understanding, for example, the mark of the beast. You will be forced to make a decision.
Yeah.
You want to buy, sell, or trade? Yeah. Go ahead.
In Revelation 13:17, it says, "And that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." That's in 13:17.
Okay. Okay.
And, it goes. There's a few other references in here, in Revelation 16:2. "And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image." So it takes two forms here. Apparently, you can have a physical mark, and you can have the way the Lord seals your forehead.
Yeah, the hand or the forehead. Yeah. No, but again, to me right now, for the purposes of this discussion, I think that's going out a little bit too far into.
Well, no. I'll bring it back into context, because we talked about people with different behavior, things we're seeing, and not just with people we know, but strangers, and just all kinds of anomalies. Two things. One is a separation is here, and we've talked about this. This is the families being driven further apart. This is the ungodly and the godly pretty much parting ways, as not something that they choose to do, but it's something that is really forced upon them. And I guarantee a lot of people could call in and attest to that fact themselves. But also, things I have been seeing in the sky the last few nights, there is an increase in activity, and of what kind? It is of all kinds. It is of military. It is of, I'm sure some secret space programs, and some other things I've never seen before. But the amount of activity is unreal. I would ask anybody that has a few hours of free time to go out after it gets dark, after the show, and just sit there for maybe a half hour and watch what goes on in the sky. Things are not moving. All things are not moving from east to west as they should, as our planet rotates and turns, and the way the sun rises and sets. The stars are not moving the same way. You have stars moving from west to east. You have stars moving from south to north. It is very different.
Very interesting observations. But yeah, look, I do think that we're seeing things that we have never seen before. But just to bring it back into the context in which we're talking about the militarization aspect of things, yeah, and I think some of this too at night is the military movements, because obviously, I believe that.
In our city here, I see Air Force planes flying in all the time, and they fly in a different way. Most airplanes come from the east to the west, line up with the airport, coming above the city of Erie, even going around if they have to come across and above the city of Erie. These planes come up from the north, from the lake, and make this real sharp turn and just go right into the airport, since we had that new runway.
Right.
Well, I've been seeing them pretty often.
Yeah, and you've got, and it's, well, of course, my stepson who went to Embry-Riddle, and I looked over his all of his flight instruction manuals and what have you. I never knew before that you actually had certain, for example, the cities, the airports, they've got certain approach paths for civilian aircraft. And yeah, what you're describing is military aircraft, indeed. So all of this ties together. I think what we're seeing right now is the preparation for what's to come. I really believe that we're close to seeing something happen. Now, the conversation I had, and we're getting to the top of the hour here, conversation I had with my sources, they're saying, well, it seems like it's close, but who knows? We might have an extra 6 months, we might have an extra year, but mathematically, these things are going to collapse, and the dollar as the world reserve currency is going to be killed, is going to be taken out.
Economic trends are irreversible, and they're increasing in their magnitude of problems.
Exactly. And yeah, you've got You got Jim Sinclair, you got others. I can name numerous economists who are saying it's inevitable. Even the Washington Post recently came out with a statement, and I'll have to. In fact, I was going to write an article about this about the it's inevitable that there will be a collapse of the U.S. dollar.
And right before we go to break, think of this: how the news reports on this. We have an imminent economic collapse, and half of the news, even the ones who say that they speak the truth, report on a recovery happening.
Well, of course. And once again, what are the people who are so high-strung into this, everything is getting better? How are they going to react when suddenly, and I mean perhaps suddenly, the rug is pulled out from underneath them? And so is this, and I would, it's my position on record, I would state that even before perhaps a false flag or a real terrorist attack or whatever, I believe that the economic conditions are going to decline so rapidly and be the real reason for the militarization process. And if you look back, can you really plan for a terrorist attack? Well, if it's a false flag, sure. But can you plan for one? No. You can prepare, but does it warrant such a process of militarization that we're seeing? I don't believe it does. However, if you look at it from the economic standpoint, knowing 30 years ago that there was going to be an end, drop dead date, if you will, then I think that this is what we're seeing, folks. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Frantic Friday edition. This is the 26th day of July 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Sometimes these conversations take left turns and sideways. It goes sideways, and we have to look at all aspects of things. So coming up is our very, very special guest. And I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to this so much. She has been a guest on CNN. She's been a guest on Fox News. She's been featured in Time magazine. Her name is Sheila Matthews, and she is the co-founder of alechild.org. Right after this. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 26th day of July 2013. It's a Friday, a fabulous Friday, actually. And we are, I'll tell you what, both Joe and I are so excited to bring forth our next very special guest. You might even know the name because Sheila Matthews has been hosted, featured on various news channels from CNN to Fox. She's been in Time magazine. She is the co-founder, along with Patricia Weathers, of an organization called alechild.org. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you've never heard of this, I'd like you to go to the website, alechild.org. That's able, like someone is able to walk around, child, like your offspring, alechild.org. Now, they are making news. What you're about to hear tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the first time heard anywhere. It's an initiative that is being drafted by Sheila Matthews and alechild.org, and she's going to get into that. But the subtext of her website, alechild.org, is Parents for Label and Drug-Free Education. Now, ladies and gentlemen, those people with children and grandchildren, and that's a vast number of our audience, whether you're in the United States and Canada, wherever you're at, you've got concerns. I know you do. We've talked about them, haven't we? We've talked about the concerns you have. We hear horror stories every day about children being medicated, over-medicated. Schools are actually pharmaceutical hubs, or acting as agents of the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to putting children on various psychotropic drugs. And it seems like the parenting, or the parents, we as grandparents, we as guardians of our own children, we've lost that ability to guard, to be parents. The state has taken that away. Well, ablechild.org, and in particular Sheila Matthews, has not. That hasn't set too well with Sheila Matthews. Just like you, it hasn't set too well with you either. Well, Sheila Matthews is going to explain what she is doing, what her organization is doing to help you, ladies and gentlemen, regain control of the whole process, to help you be the parent or the grandparent that you were meant to be. Boy, I hope I did an okay job introducing our next guest, Sheila Matthews. Sheila, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. That was awesome. I'm so pleased and grateful to be on your show.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. I've got to tell you, I spent a lot of time after we spoke looking at your website, and it's much needed. Your mission statement, it's very much needed. You're a much needed asset to the people that we have. I'll tell you what. I want you to share your story of your own story, because I have a feeling your mission has grown really from a personal. It was a result of what you're doing right now. It was part of something you might have personally experienced in your own family, and then you took steps to combat the processes. Am I close?
Oh, yes, you're right on target. I am a mom. I have 2 boys, and I started out like every other parent, all excited to send my boys to school, and my oldest son was 7 at the time, and I started to receive calls from the school saying that he was misbehaving and not paying attention, and they had suggested, we really should do an evaluation on him, and I was kind of taken back. I was like, as mom, I wanted to do everything I could to make sure that it was a smooth transition into getting my son into school. And so basically, to make a long story short, the school had suggested to me that I place my son on a psychiatric drug at the age of 7, and I was like, absolutely not. That's not something I want to do. And if any parent is out there that knows about the team meetings, you're one parent and then it's the entire, a team of teachers and the school psychologist and the principal is all sitting at the desk, and you're, the mom, and they're all describing how awful your child is, and you're like, oh my God. I didn't see this at home, and, for me it was a real disconnect. My son was very verbal at a very young age, and, he was the kind of kid you either loved him or couldn't stand him. But, the bottom line is that the school had told me I had no other alternative but to put him on this psychiatric drug, and I was really scared. I didn't have anybody to turn to. I was getting ready for my meeting, and I happened to turn on the TV the night before, and I was watching C-SPAN, and I saw a mom who is now the co-founder of Able Child. We joined forces, but I saw her, and she was like, the school told me to put my son on Paxil, and I felt like I listened to them, and then he attacked me with a knife. And it was very scary, and she was testifying, and I was like, oh, my God, I want to talk to this mom. So I called D.C., I called Congress. They gave me her name, and we talked for an hour before I went into the meeting, and she said, do me a favor. She said, just listen to me. She said, I listened to them, and I regretted it. Stand up and tell them you don't believe in this ADHD. And I did. I went into the school, and I said, this is not what I want. And so we joined forces. At that day, she, it was a higher force put us together, because I just happened to turn on the TV, and so we decided that day we need to warn parents about their rights. We need to help parents out there because they're telling us all the same thing, but we're all not connected, so we can't help each other. So we launched Able Child about 13 years ago, and to this day, I've never placed my son on psychiatric drugs. He is now in college. He's doing really well. He's in PR, and I'm really very blessed that I met her, and I for the last 13 years I have been working on legislation. I've been trying to educate parents. We built this website together. So, my mission has taken me to some very unusual places, into foster care, into politics, into television and radio, and it's just been an amazing journey, and I do believe that we are saving lives. Children are dying. They're dying from these drugs, and they don't want to tell anybody. So that's
Wow.
my story.
Well, I've got to say this. Hopefully I'm not talking out of school, but in talking with our producer today, I know that they tried to get his son on Ritalin, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and he refused, never took it. But it almost seems it almost seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because look, I have educated or sent through the school system, both in the private and the public school system, for children. Now I'm watching a grandchild go through the same school system. It seems like we're losing control over our ability to make decisions. I mean, on their behalf, decisions that we should only be ours as parents. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We are losing our informed consent rights. We are basically, what's happening is, the special interest groups, the drug companies, and the psychiatric industry, the behavioral health vendors that the states employ to dole out these psychiatric services have completely taken over the system. And they are up there lobbying, handing out money, handing out goodies to all the legislators, and all the people are handpicked to be on all these committees that are geared towards one thing: keep them drugged, keep them medicated, and keep promoting mental illness as though it is a shortage. We have a shortage of everything. We have a shortage of psychiatrists. We have a shortage of drugs. We have a shortage of everything, and it's completely the opposite. It's completely the opposite. We are over-drugging our kids. We have too many psychiatrists. We have absolutely way too much influence of psychiatry in the public schools that we are no longer teaching reading and writing and critical thinking. We are evaluating children on how they behave, and then we're diagnosing them with different disorders, and then we're drugging them up with dangerous mind-altering drugs.
Man, I got to tell you, that angers me just listening to what you're saying. It just brings back memories that, because well, without going down that road, what I found absolutely astonishing, and I'm wondering how many of our listeners know this, and I learned this really because of you, Sheila. And our producer Mitch. I learned that the psychiatrist, his name was Leon Eisenberg, he was a guy who first diagnosed ADHD. He's like the grandfather or the father of that disease. He named it. That's identified it. He was the guy behind that identification of that disease. But at age 87, just months before his death, in his last interview, he said, ADHD is a prime example of a fictitious, made-up disease. And I got to thinking about that. The person who actually discovered this disease, if you will, is saying it's just made up. That's pretty significant.
Well, it's fraud. That's what it is, and it's a huge moneymaker. And first of all, it's not a disease because, as we know, behavior is not a disease. A disease you can look under a microscope, you can see. And you know what? The fact that this has blossomed into a weed that is out of control, that is choking our society, it is outrageous. It is outrageous. It's Medicaid fraud, it's educational fraud, and basically our children are dying. I mean, my organization has worked on 3 school shootings. And basically, what we have found is that 31 of the last school shootings have been tied to the use of psychiatric drugs. Our organization right now is in the midst of a pretty big legal battle in the state of Connecticut up against the governor, Governor Malloy, for the toxicology and medical records of Adam Lanza. Because they're being withheld from the public. And, you know, the problem with that is that we can't legislate. Because what they are doing is they're saying, oh, he didn't get enough psychiatry. He didn't get treatment. We need to spend more money. And they're throwing more of our tax dollars into more treatment and more identification of the kids. They want to screen all children in public schools for mental illness. And the fact is, we don't have those records. So how do we know what he received? How do we know what he had in his blood system if we don't get access to the toxicology reports? Hearsay of, oh, nothing was found is not good enough for us. Our organization would like to see the reports. We'd like to see his medical records. We know from people who have said that he was on drugs. So, you know what? It's just another indication that these school shootings are linked potentially to these mind-altering drugs. So, you know, as a mom or a dad, and you're out there and you're listening and you think, this doesn't affect me. Well, somebody else's son or daughter can pick up a gun or another weapon on these psychiatric drugs and walk into a cafe and take everybody out. And the fact is, it's not the gun, it's not the knife, it's the mind-altering drugs. And they don't want to the state of Connecticut and the governor doesn't want to have that discussion with our organization, because then it puts the drug companies in the light, and it puts the failed mental health system that we're all paying for into the light, and they want to avoid that at all costs. So, you know, as we speak, we are waiting for our attorney on our appeal in the state of Connecticut, and you know, it's important. It's important for us to know, not only for, you know, my children are grown, your children are grown, our grandchildren. Like, at what point, how many more children need to die? How many more? For us to get the records released and to have a good conversation about mental health and the drug companies.
You know what, Sheila, in preparation for our interview tonight, I was doing some research. And frankly, I've got to tell you, I was blown away, because what you're saying, and folks, by the way, we're talking with Sheila Matthews, her website. Bookmark this website. Get involved, even if you don't have children in the school system. It's ablechild.org. But I was blown away, because I knew this was big business. Folks, the top 20 pharmaceutical companies, and there are 2 parent trade groups, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America and the Biotechnology Industry Organization. They lobbied on at least 1,600 pieces of legislation in a 6-year period between 1998 and 2004. But what really got me, and Sheila, I don't even know how that, I mean, this just astounded me. The pharmaceutical companies spent $900 million on lobbying between 1998 and 2005. more than any other industry. The oil industry, more than any other industry. And they donate. And this is the other thing too. They donated $90 million to federal candidates and their political parties. Wow. Okay, so we're talking about a huge money interest here. Obviously, at the very root of it is it's money, isn't it?
Well, it's money and it's corruption, and you know what the fact is that it is really the story of David and Goliath. I mean, 13 years ago or probably a little less, we went down to the FDA and we testified with other parents who were holding up pictures of their kids that hung themselves, or, did other things to themselves that from these drugs. And we had now, the past decade, we had a 50% or more increase in the diagnosing and the drugging of kids. And our organization, we are funded by parents across the country. And when I go up to the Capitol, I spend the day up there, and they know who I am. And, I look and I see what I'm up against. And I, really what we can do is educate parents. I could spend the next 10 years trying to change laws, but we do have laws right now that protect us. And that's why I'm really so excited to be on your show tonight, because we have launched a campaign for parents to put a letter in their children's file at school saying, we don't want to participate in these psychiatric evaluations and these psychiatric programs. And it's a letter that was actually crafted by Senator Hatch. And it's we're calling it the Get Hatched campaign. And it's on our website. You can download it and put it in your child's folder. And basically that letter says, look, I'm an awake parent. I know what my rights are, and I'm not going through this long drawn out forced drugging of my child and you holding my child hostage over the education. And so, my hope is that with your show and with the media that we've done, that we do make a big dent in this, because we don't want any more school shootings. We don't want any more children that, frankly, lose their childhood. It's just not a society that is sustainable at this time. It's almost like the facts that you were reading off about the lobbyists with the drug companies.
Yes.
After a while, it becomes like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, they know what they're doing. My organization knows what they're doing, and they know it. And we are willing, there are some life-saving drugs out there, no doubt. But do we need to drug our kids in the educational system? I think that market should be off limits. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are so quick to, when I say we, it seems like society is so quick to toss medication or pharmaceuticals at a problem when in fact, it's not a problem. And I learned this too, this year, 1 out of 10 boys, 10-year-olds, they're taking medication for ADHD on a daily basis. That's, what is that, 10%? With increasing tendency in the top, or with the help of various these teen screen surveys in public schools, they're really setting up these kids for a fall. It's incredible. I just find this whole topic incredible. But you're fighting back. Your organization is fighting back. Okay, so, yeah, but okay, just to be clear, because I'm not sure, not having children right now in the school system, is it common, or is it different state by state, for example, to if you have a child in elementary school or in high school, can they prescribe, for example, drugs without your permission?
No, they cannot. They have no right to give your child any drug without your informed consent.
Okay.
I have heard stories that it has been happening, and I've also heard stories they're now doing iris scans of children and doing a lot of things. I mean, I hear in the news, and it's very upsetting. But this Hatch letter is really kind of like your red flag to put in your child. Like in the beginning of school, the school is going to ask you for all this information about your privacy, like who's your child's doctor, your dentist, because they do need that on file. But when you put the Hatch Amendment letter in your child's folder, it's like saying to the school, I want informed consent.
Okay.
It's such a protection. The letter is like your kryptonite against them taking away your child's rights. So, what's the harm in putting the letter in your folder, So, that is the key, to do, I think, as a parent.
Oh, okay. And this is your initiative. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sheila Matthews, once again, her website is ablechild.org. Your organization, the organization that you co-founded, your initiative, your toolbox for parents and grandparents or custodian of children is, and this is the newsmaker of the day right now. You're breaking this right now on our show, and thank you, by the way, is you have got this toolbox, and in this toolbox is will be a model Hatch letter, which demand might be a pretty strong word, but insists that before your child is before anything is done with your child, you must inform or get the consent of the parent. Is that pretty much correct? And then, of course,
sure.
you okay. Go ahead.
It's a very friendly letter, and Senator Hatch wrote the letter because of the drugging and because of the psychiatric influence in the school system. And what they were hoping was that parents could, initiate this letter in a friendly manner, just basically saying before you do a program, let's say, for example, on suicide prevention. Sometimes they come in, the psychiatrist or the school psychologist will come into the science class and give all the children pretzels, and they'll say, we wanted to let you know that if you ever need to talk to anybody, if you're thinking about suicide, blah, 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 you could come down and talk to us. And, this Hatch Amendment protects your child against that. And the idea of a suicide prevention program is wonderful. Everybody wants to prevent suicide. But what they're not telling the children and the families in the school system is that the use of the psychiatric drugs increase your risk to commit suicide. So they're not giving out the right facts. We could spend another 10 years arguing with them that they're not giving out the right facts, or you can avoid participation. So the Hatch Amendment is a friendly letter that you can just, in the beginning of the school year, you put it in your child's folder and you say, any kind of program that's going to really jeopardize my child's system of beliefs, like religious beliefs, or these psychiatric programs where they create the dramas and they act out things. You don't have to participate. In a friendly manner, you say thanks but no thanks, because they're not telling you all the information. So, you could always participate. I've had them call me and they'll say, we're going to be doing this thing on Friday. Do you want your child in it? Because I have the Hatch Amendment I did have it in my children's file, so
Sure.
they could, they would call me and I would listen to what the program was, and then sometimes I would say, yeah, sure, they could participate, but most of the time I said no because it just was, it wasn't made sense, and plus they're taking away time for science and math and reading. We're one of the lowest countries in the world right now, and it's pathetic. So I'm very excited about launching this Get Hatched campaign. You can go on our website at ablechild.org, and you can see a golden egg. And it's really simple. The letter's right there. It's a PDF file. You could just pop it down on your computer and craft it, tailor it to your school, your child's name, and get it in your child's folder for the new school year.
This is fabulous, actually. What a great tool. Now, you said you've used this. Was there any resistance to this? For example, when you provided, in your case, this letter to your child's school or the principal, the faculty, did you receive any resistance at all to this, or was it accepted?
I somewhat did. I mean, they know me because I've been on national radio and television. They walked very silently around me because I was so like, you tried to, diagnose my child. But, we ended up with a very friendly relationship by the time my boys graduated. But yeah, they would call me and you would hear the tone of voice like, they had to do that. They had to make that phone call. But, I think if you're friendly with the school, the worst thing you could do is to become really upset about it. Our website, if you ever have a problem, you can go right on to ablechild.org, Facebook. It's a community of parents, of support. So we're always here to help. We answer emails on a regular basis. But to answer your question, I think they knew who I was, so they
it's amazing how that works. Yeah, exactly. Well, what about the average person who, when I say average, I don't mean anything demeaning by it, but the person who's not well known, for example, who would take this letter and model it, craft it, reword it, or not reword it, but to structure it to the school and their child, and they give it to the school. And they encounter resistance. Now, do you offer any type of counseling or advice to the parent that does encounter resistance to this?
We do have, again, we have the Facebook, and you can just log on to AbleChild, tell us where you're having problems, and we usually get right back to you and give you support. We don't give out advice. We do give it support, and we give suggestions. Okay. And then what you can do is, AbleChild is once a school hears the word AbleChild, that has saved a lot of parents because they know our organization and they're like, oh, they're on to us because we know they're trying to drug your kid. So once they hear that, I'm a member of AbleChild, or I'm an AbleChild parent, and if you're in a IEP meeting, or a conference with the school, they know that you're fully informed. So we've tried over the 13 years when I was raising my kids and my partner, my co-founder, we put together this website so you don't have to battle. We did the battle. We stayed up nights crafting this website and crafting, a campaign, and we got nonprofit status. So we want to give it away for free because we want society. We don't want the state to take your kid. We don't want the state to to drug your kid, and we don't want any more school shootings. The right to privacy. Your child's mind is not the state's mind. It's not the school's responsibility to get into your child's mind and teach your child how to behave. Their role is education. And that they have crossed the line, and they have allowed two very powerful industries to craft the curriculum and to operate in the school systems, and we want them out. We want them out. And we have to take control back.
I take it you haven't gotten any Christmas cards from Hillary Clinton. It takes a village to raise a child.
I've been to her office. I've been to the. You know what? One thing great about Able Child is we're not. We don't. They politicians. As you read with the pharmaceutical dollars going there, we don't take sides with anybody, because you never know who. I have to work both sides of the aisle, and as I was telling your producer, my cousin just got appointed by President Obama as the head of FBI. James Comey is my cousin, and I've been trying to tell him all these years. So you never know. I'm trying to utilize every ounce of power that I possess to give away free what my co-founder Patricia Weathers and I had to battle for, and that's informed consent and the right to refuse psychiatric drugs. We are not opposed to anybody using them. If you want to use psychiatric drugs, you should do it. But we don't want to, and we don't want you to label our children because our children behave a certain way. It's against our children's constitutional right to label them by a behavior that a school psychologist deems to be, a disease, which is not. It's false science, it's drug research, and it's dangerous. So, we're in it for the long term. We have this appeal for the school shooters' records. I'm up against the governor. Very disappointed in his holding back the records and pushing a political agenda that will hurt children in the long run. It will. It doesn't solve the school shooting problem. It doesn't. And he might not want to hear that from a mom or anybody else, but I got to tell you, when you hurt children by inactive, by corruption, really, to be honest with you, it's corruption, and
yeah, absolutely.
I'm hoping.
Yes. No, it is.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of interject a personal story here, and I know the families. Well, I'm acquainted with the families. Perhaps that might be a better term. Back in 1998, there was in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. It's a very, very small town, a very sleepy village here in northwestern Pennsylvania. A young man, a 14-year-old boy, shot. Well, there was a dance. There was a dance at the banquet hall on a Friday night in April of 1998, and this 14-year-old boy walked into this banquet hall and shot a teacher, and ran. And this, by all indications, this young man was having a lot of psychological problems. Right now he's serving 60 years in prison for his acts. But there was always this talk about the. In fact, he had to go back in time a little bit, several weeks and even several months before the shooting. He had said that he was going to do something like this, and no one responded to it. Now, this is back in 1998, and classmates were saying that, hey, this young man had his behavior was changing. They noticed his behavior being altered. And once again, there was this indication that he was under treatment and taking some sort of psychiatric drugs. And this was the first, to me, this was my first exposure to school shootings. So this is that's 15 years ago. Now, having said that, I guess, wouldn't you say this is the dirty little secret about school shootings and about shootings that involve young people, and that a great percentage of them, they're at the epicenter is psychiatric drugs, psychotropic drugs?
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting because the psychiatric industry is the first one all over the media saying, oh, he didn't get enough treatment, or, giving a blow-by-blow as the media is showing all the people running from the building. They're the ones that are on the air, and it's interesting because none of them say, well, I wonder if he was treated, and maybe we should take a look at his medical records, and, who's the treating psychiatrist, on these things. So, it's an epidemic, but it is created by the psychiatric industry. They are creating these killers. They are. And the evidence is clear. When you have 31 school shootings, they said at least 14 recent school shootings were committed by those taking or withdrawing from psychiatric drugs. There have been 109 wounded and 58 people killed, and this report was done, a while ago. So, I could read to you, cases of psychiatric drugs, like over 10,000 cases of psychiatric drugs causing complete suicides. So the actual drug is inducing the suicide. It's on the commercials. I worked on getting the if you see a drug commercial for a psychiatric drug, on the bottom it says you have an increased risk of suicide. Our organization helped. We weren't the only ones. We were down there at the FDA trying to tell them that they had to put it on the commercials. So, yeah, it is a dirty little secret, and that's why the governor of Connecticut isn't releasing the medical records. And that's why we have to file an appeal to fight to get those records released, because you know what? From all indications that came out in the news a couple of weeks ago, Adam Lanza was treated at Danbury Hospital and screened and released. And now they want to use that same screening in all our public schools. It's a waste of time.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was screened.
Wow. And released.
And released. So now, and then they are crafting legislation saying we need to screen all the children. Really? You screen this one, and he ended up shooting and killing innocent children. And you know what? All the people that the Connecticut governor appointed to the Sandy Hook Commission all have vested interest in the pharmaceuticals. I know. I did the research. The head Dr. Hendrick, who is distributing funds, was a speaker for a pharmaceutical company. And so this is corruption. It's corruption 101. There's no conspiracy. There's no hidden agenda. It's greed. That's what it is. It's greed and total access for drug companies in the psychiatric industry at the cost of our children.
At the
cost of our children.
And that's one. And sorry, well, I'm not going to apologize for this, but that's one hell of a price to pay. You know, when you really think about this, what about the advertising? It seems like you just cannot get away from the advertising of these drugs on television. And of course, you know, is there anything that can be done about that? I mean, they took cigarette advertising off of television, and if I'm not mistaken, then they take liquor off. I don't know, but you know, should these pharmaceutical companies be allowed to advertise like they do on television?
I think that the doctors are sick of it too. To be honest with you, I think that the doctors, imagine being a doctor, that you go through all these years of schooling and everything like that, and then your patient comes in and says, oh, I saw on CNN or I saw on Fox News that there's this new psychiatric drug or this new drug. You know, it's like, since when, you know, medicine has changed because of that. You know, I mean, the doctors, I don't think, are too thrilled with it. And then you have the pharmaceutical people knocking on the doors and everything like that. And then you have the media that refuses to cover the school shootings in an accurate way because they don't want to offend their biggest client. I mean, really? Really, we have 20 children gunned down in such a horrific manner, and you don't want to have Anderson Cooper's up there and doesn't want to have Abel Child on. I mean, they know. I was on the ground in Newtown 2 weeks after it happened. I mean, the day of the shooting, I emailed the governor and said, look at all the work we've done on the link between, could you just check into this link between psychiatric drugs and this new school shooting? And they ignore me.
Yeah, and there's an agenda there too with Newtown and other shootings to go against the gun, make this about the Second Amendment, whereas in fact it's more relevant in the context of the prescribing of the psychotropic drugs.
That's right. It's all about the drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you said earlier about the lobbying, the drug companies are the largest lobbying. They're larger than the NRA. They're larger than the gun lobby. So it's like the game of Monopoly. Sometimes the person with all the money wins and buys up everything. That's what's happening,
Wow.
It's not good.
No, not at all.
It's not good.
But
we can make it better.
Make it better. Well, and I think you're providing, first of all, and the big news here is, if I'm reading this correctly, is through your website, and that's ablechild.org. You're providing parents of students with the ability to compel the schools to notify the parents. And this is kind of like this has not been done at this level before. Is that a fair statement?
That's right. That's
wow.
right. The Hatch Amendment is not. The PTA is not promoting the Hatch Amendment. NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, that's funded by the drug companies, they're not going to be promoting the Hatch Amendment because it gives parents the ability to say, no, I don't want to do this. So, it is breaking news. We have a letter for you, and put it in your child's file. And start the school. If every parent did it and stood with us, we would win. We wouldn't have to waste any more lives. We wouldn't have to waste 13 more years and battle the industry. And
it's a good point.
I'm not going to put the drug companies out of business. Nor is that our mission.
No,
our mission.
I'm sure they've got enough clients without the children. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's exactly right. It's like, come on, these are innocent children. They know what happened in Newtown. It wasn't, we're not gun people. That's not our issue, but it's the drugs. Let's take a look at one of your clients. Let's take a look at the outcome of your mental health you gave to that boy. Let's take a look at it, and I bet you if you take a real look at it and you show it and you market that to parents, look, this is Adam Lanza was one of our clients. You too can be like him. I doubt anybody would be signing up for their drugs or their evaluations.
No,
they wouldn't be.
No, of course not. If he were the poster child for the various medications, and I think we'll find that out, and you're going to pursue that, correct? And until the bitter end,
yeah.
Until there's a decision. Boy, please keep us informed about your findings, about what's revealed from that, because that to me would tell a whole lot. But I think it was also indicated that he was being treated. We just don't know to what extent, correct? That he was taking drugs.
Right, and then the other thing I'm working on is legislation for the toxicology, because the panels at the chief medical examiner's office haven't been updated in years. So you could put a child on an experimental drug, which happens in foster care, which breaks my heart, and it's not on the screening panel at the chief medical examiner's office, so they're not going to even detect that drug was in the child's system. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of protections that need to be implemented.
Actually, and your work just from the website, and folks, once again, that's ablechild.org. You folks are definitely making a difference, and the history. I just found it interesting. The history behind your organization is on there. Everything you want to know about their mission, their history, even the representatives and board of directors. Full disclosure up there on ablechild.org. And but you're fully. I mean, you exist through donations. I take it. Is that how you're able to exist?
And we are desperately in need. I hate to say that because I do not like to ask for money at all, and my partner and I have struggled with that over the years. So we are funded by parents throughout the country, and we do little fundraisers here and there. But people are amazed that we get tremendous amount of media exposure, but we have really no money. So any donations is very much welcomed.
Well, it certainly, and we know how it is. We're a listener-supported broadcast, and we stay on the air, and we exist because of people who are, who keep us afloat, and our limited number of sponsors. So we understand that, and you're up against. People talk about what we're up against, but you're up against the most powerful lobby on the planet. And that's the pharmaceutical lobby, and certainly, wow, you are the David in the David and Goliath scenario. Sheila, I just want to thank you so very much. You essentially broke the story on our show, and I want to just tell you how grateful we are for you doing so, and that's the fact that this Hatch Amendment letter is available. You're making it available to parents, and this being July, we've got time before the children go back to school. So parents, bookmark ablechild.org and get a hold of that letter, print it out, put it on your letterhead, and make sure make sure your children's school gets a copy of it. And one last question before we cut you loose here. Have you run into any situation where in presenting the letter, for example, has created a situation that the child would be not permitted to enter the school system because of your letter or because of the conditions within the letter?
No, and I have never heard of that, but the thing is that you have to remember this letter was not created by Abel Child. It was created by a senator. And the senator is still a sitting senator of Utah, Senator Hatch, and his office, I'm sure, would be very supportive. I'm sure that the school would have to answer to Senator Hatch as to why they would not let their child into the school because of Senator Hatch's letter. So it's a powerful letter. It's
Absolutely.
a powerhouse letter. So
that's right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Sheila, I want to thank you so very much for coming on our program tonight and spending an hour with us and telling us about what's going on. And this is such a huge matter. I mean, and so relevant to today. I mean, it's just thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having Abel Child on.
Well, we appreciate your time, and I just want to say God bless you, and we will spread the word about your enterprise, your website, your endeavors, and urge everyone to sign on and assist you as well. So just want to say God bless. And by the way, just tell your first cousin, who, folks, in case you missed it, her first cousin is the nominee has been nominated to head the FBI under Obama. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
He's a good egg.
All right. Well, perhaps we can grab him, during his tenure, if assuming and I do suspect that he'll take that position and be approved. But maybe we can twist his arm to come on for 15 minutes and talk to us about. Answer a couple of questions about the FBI. But that said, thank you so much. We've got to take a break. Going to cut you loose, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
God bless.
All righty.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Folks, that was Sheila Matthews from ablechild.org. That's ablechild.org. And I got to tell you, what a just the whole concept behind what she's doing. Can you think of anything? Can you think of anything more important or less important than your child? I don't think so. I got to tell you, what could be more important than the health of your child? Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This is the Friday edition, the 26th day of July 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're right back after these messages. Stay with us. By the way, your phone calls at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. Up next. Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world. Folks, another great sponsor of ours, terrific people. And if you haven't visited their website yet, I really suggest you do. And that's Granlund Firearms of British Columbia. Now, you might be saying, come on, I just hear you talk about them all the time. Well, I should, because I've got to tell you, they're great people. Carl and Lori Granlund, terrific people. They've been in business for 20 years. They're located up in Campbell River, British Columbia. That's Canada, folks. If you're up in Canada, pay them a visit. That's British Columbia, that is. The Campbell River, pay them a visit if you're close. If not, you can visit them virtually. Visit their website. That's GranlundFirearms.com. Simply go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the graphic for Granlund Firearms. Once again, they've got just a great list of guns for sale, long rifles for sale, at competitive prices, at prices that rival anything here in the United States and certainly in Canada. And they've got hunting supplies. It's a hunter's paradise, actually. I would urge everyone to pay them a visit if you're in the market for those items, survival equipment, hunting equipment, even apparel. Hey, they've got a great T-shirt, by the way. It's a black T-shirt with a deer head. It's a cool T-shirt. And of course, Carl's book, Treat Beyond the River, which is about cougar hunting on Vancouver Island, a great read. Regardless of your purpose, pay him a visit. That's Granlund Firearms in British Columbia. GranlundFirearms.com. That's GranlundFirearms.com. Tell them Doug and Joe sent you.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour of this Friday edition. Today, July 26, 2013. We had a very it was an excellent interview last hour with Miss Matthews, and that was a lot of the things she said. I was sitting back listening as I didn't want to say anything, but I had kind of a rough headache going on, and you talked about how you take this hour and take the interview, and I was just sitting there listening, and it was an awesome interview, just from a listener standpoint.
Well, the thing, and it kind of dovetails too with we talk with the big thing, I guess. The thing I got out of it is her organization, the Hatch Amendment letter, her grassroots campaign to address the drug issue in the school or the pharmaceutical issue in the school, the take charge attitude, and what she was saying too about they're not contentious. They don't, it's not. They're not out for a big drama, a big fight. They're just out to get the job done. Look, let's not do this. Don't give my children, or don't counsel them on my children on pharmaceuticals. Don't. The curriculum aspect of things too. So what she said, I think, is groundbreaking news information. I mean, to roll this out, to give us this. So I'm very thankful that she broke this on our radio show. And
absolutely.
Wow,
and
man,
it was a great interview just to sit back and listen. I think when the show's over and you get a chance, you go back and sit there and listen. It was very good. We're going to open the phone lines. Give us a call at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. One story I want to hit here before we do go to the phones. Pentagon spokesman. Public affairs must change with times. The Defense Department is facing a once-in-a-generation change, and its public affairs practitioners around the world need to communicate that change clearly, the Pentagon's chief spokesman said today. George Little, assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, spoke to a commissioned, enlisted civilian and contract and employee defense public affairs professionals gathered at the Defense Ministry or the Defense Media Activities headquarters on Fort Meade in Maryland. Little remarks were also webcast. Public affairs is an absolutely critical component of our military and our department, and he said we operate in a world so tightly connected that every word, event, big or small, can be felt in real time.
Wow.
What they talked about changing was military and civilian defense leaders' responsibility for effective communications, expanding the toolbar of essential skills for public affairs and professionals. And this goes back to a PDF I was looking at yesterday. I sent this to you. I don't know if you saw this, but this was a report to the Committee on Armed Services, a Government Accountability Office report, and it talks about military information support operations, and John McCain, of course, John McCain, and who else his name was on this thing? Carl Levin. And they go in to talk about how the growth of global communications allows violent extremists to quickly transmit messages around the world, which can affect both the U.S. military operations and foreign audience perceptions of the United States. To better support the United States government, the Department of Defense activities and policies DoD is conducting military information support operations. Military information support operations. Now listen to what these are. These are going to be conducted to influence foreign audiences to change their attitudes and behaviors in support of the U.S. government and the Department of Defense objectives. $54 million was spent in 2012 approximately on efforts in peacetime operations, including combat operations also, by building host nation military capacity through subject matter, expert exchanges, and creating websites and magazines. So here, in this Government Accountability Office report, where it talks about, the title of it again is Military Information Support Operations, Improved Coordination, Evaluation, Training, and Equipping are needed. But this talks about the U.S. government spending $54 million last year of our tax dollars to change the perception with propaganda throughout the world of the United States and its government.
Yeah, and how much sense does that make? I mean, wow.
Who cares?
$54 million. Of course, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what's being spent. Joe, I got an email from a listener about something we were talking about the first hour. I'll just give the initials of this listener because I don't want to violate any confidence. Confidence is, I'll just say BH, writes, "Hi, Doug. I'm hearing you talk about contractors in tonight's program. One of you mentioned that the contractors are not sworn in. Now, this listener writes, this is true. I have been both a federal contractor with a confidential clearance. Now, think about this, folks. And a federal employee. I was not sworn in as a contractor, but the moment you enter the federal employment, you are sworn in. It's interesting. No oath to uphold the Constitution when you work for the federal government as a contractor. So there you have it, by someone who has been in the process.
Not surprising. Yeah.
So,
and that speaks to the loyalty aspect of where these troops' loyalties lie.
So with a confidential clearance, which granted, it's not, I mean, but nonetheless, you would think that if you're acting on behalf of the United States government, that you would have to take an oath of allegiance. But no, not in this case. Wow. Well, thank you very much, BH, for sending this in. We really appreciate that. And that answers some questions and also raises more questions as we look at it. So this is, wow. All right.
And we're going to get to the phone calls here. One other story I wanted to hit on, but I don't think we'll, there's a 4-minute audio that goes with it. The audio is titled Raytheon's Joint Land Attack Cruise Missile Defense Elevated Netted Sensor System. There are blimps now being flown around Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Okay? Surveillance blimps, hundreds of them, from what I understand. And I only read this article once, but I have to go back and find it. But yes, there are these blimps that are out over Washington, D.C. for the sole purpose of surveillance, not to give people airlifts into, tours of the aerial tours of the city. This is for specifically surveillance. Now, here's the story from yesterday. Let's see. Pentagon deploys huge blimps over Washington, D.C., 363-degree surveillance.
Right.
And I will pull this article up right now. So now we're using little Hindenburgs to, not really, but blimps to perform surveillance and defense operations as well over the nation's capital. Isn't that interesting? I don't know.
Do we know the altitude? Do we know the altitude of these craft?
Okay, here we go. Pentagon
I'm not sure.
Deploy huge blimps over Washington, D.C. A pair of high-tech Army blimps is coming to the greater Washington City area. And soon they will be able to provide the military with surveillance powers that spans hundreds of millions of acres from North Carolina to Niagara Falls. The airships are part of Raytheon's Joint Land Attack Cruise Missiles Defense Elevated Netted Sensor System, or JELIANS, and when all is said and done, they'll offer the United States military what the defense contractor calls an affordable, elevated, persistent, over-the-horizon sensor system that relies on a powerful, integrated radar system to detect, track, and target a variety of threats. Now,
so that's got to be, first of all, there's two, and second of all, they've got to be at pretty high altitudes to cover that distance. Okay, but why is that important?
We saw the video of the one surveillance drone that they had. We were able to go back in up to 3 days in time and look at what was happening, and you could get down to the details of what somebody was basically doing with their body motion. You saw that video, correct?
Yes, and in that video, one thing that caught my attention, and folks, it's available on the internet, but they blocked out, or they had the creator of the camera system for this surveillance drone had to cover up the actual camera system. But it's my understanding, based on the description of this, imagine your cell phone camera, the camera that's in your cell phone, if you've got one of the newer models, and you take a whole bunch, I mean, I'm talking about thousands even, and putting them on a three-dimensional, I want to say like a huge basketball, but it's got it's not really a basketball. It's got flat sides on a lot of flat sides, and you paste these cameras on each of these, on every square inch of this ball. You paste these cameras, but the cameras are extremely high resolution cameras, and they can. So what you've got is this constant 360-degree real-time surveillance camera system in these surveillance drones that could even, in fact, even didn't the video even show somebody what color shorts they were wearing on the ground? I mean, it was that detailed. It was were they red license plates even?
Yep.
In real time.
No, there was very close. You could pretty much, if you wanted to, from my understanding, read what somebody had on their phone. That's how close they could get. But we're going to go to the phone lines. If you want to call in, we have 40 minutes left. We're going to take phone calls from here on out. 661-244-9839. That's the number to call to get connected with us. You press 1. It'll put up an indicator for us that you want to speak with the host and come on air. And jump in line. There's about 3 people on hold right now. We're going to move to the calls right now. Area code 570. We're coming to you first. Thanks for your patience. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yes, can you hear me?
We
Hello?
sure can. We sure
Loud
can.
and clear.
Yeah, I'm a behavioral therapist in the Northeast PA region, and I'm calling in response to the previous woman that you interviewed.
Okay.
I go into the homes in the entire Northeast region, in a 3-county region. I deal with the kids, the families. And I have 11 years experience in 3 different states, and I'm telling you that kids have never behaved so badly, so aggressively, so defiantly in human history. These kids, we're dealing with a nation with, the numbers can vary, 65, 70% of the homes in this nation are without fathers. The homes are entirely controlled by the women, and the man and the woman, Generation X, we have become outlandish parents. The men are doing what they're doing, hooking up with other women in bars on a regular basis. The men are, and the women are hooking up with other people online, while our kids are almost killing each other and almost killing parents. And you can find reports on any given week about how parents have killed their parents anywhere in this nation. The behaviors I'm seeing now, the behaviors I'm seeing at 12, I'm seeing at 5. These kids are so out of control. You can walk into a house and they're hanging off the chandeliers. The parents have no idea how to deal with the monsters they've created. So, and I'm not a med pusher. I work to establish dominance in the house, get the parents working together to take control of their home. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Ideally, I want these kids off meds. But, you know, as a behavioral therapist, family therapist, right in the middle of the worst family situations you can imagine, you get to the point to where you got a 5 or an 8 or a 12-year-old that is aggressively coming at you in however way you can imagine. We're kind of out of options. And even when you do put them on meds to slow them down to a certain degree, I understand the fluoride. I preach all of this. I try to wake up people on a daily basis. I was in a hospital dealing with a psych issue yesterday, sitting in the lobby, talking to state workers, educating them about fluoride. And and the discussion of meds came up, and a whole array, which led to a whole array of other awakening discussions.
I can imagine. Well, caller, I appreciate this because I've seen this behavior, and I've seen this this decline in civility at that young age. And you see it in the grocery store, for example, or you see it on the playground, or if you have children or grandchildren who go to school, you can tell. I mean, you see it everywhere. But what do you, since you're working in this venue, what do you attribute? Is there any one thing or certain key elements here that you would attribute this change of behaviors to this? From 12 to 5, I mean, what's the cause of this?
Well, in my mind, and I work with these parents, three contributing factors. Once, Generation X and the previous generation, we were the last generations to actually work out in the fields. We went from 20 million farms to around 2 million farms. We got kids stumbling in any community in America, just stumbling around, clueless, not knowing what to do with themselves at any given point of the day. And if you don't establish a work ethic at 5, you can't expect somebody like me, to come in and establish dominance and teach respect at 14. So you have an entire age range, whether it's from 5 to 18, of these kids, no work responsibility, no forced expectations. You got the families busted, and the school's reinforcing what your previous interview was stating, that is absolutely right. Now, what's interesting is the fact that there is within these last few years, and it's hilarious, I think, because there are certain people like me that's actually, and I'm not a state worker, I'm a private worker, but I get paid through state funds. What's interesting is there's a whole series of people being trained to go into the homes and reestablish dominance with the parents to take control of what's happening. It's called executive functioning and co-caregiver alliance. What they did, they came up with these nice little scientific words to actually get it approved through a university here in Northeast PA, and it's actually being pushed. It's potentially becoming the accepted model. It's being pushed by the local government agencies. What I'm saying, it's hilarious that the government and the school systems help destroy the family. Now it is so bad that they're pushing people like me to go in to try to restore the family.
They created the problem, and now they're okay. Now they have you to handle the blowback. What about the technology, like the PlayStations, the iPads? It seems like everything associated with the internet or the iPhones, they're all antisocial devices, or devices that are catalysts for children to become antisocial. Is that what you're seeing?
That was the third thing, and I left that out. These kids stumble around in a complete fantasy world. These kids, you pick the age, they will flip out if they can't get their DS, their phone, their Xbox. They have to have that. And if they don't immediately get that right now, they're going to go into the worst behaviors you can imagine, and it can last for hours. So, and this is one of the things I battle with these parents about. These Generation X parents are something else. I battle with these parents to take control of these electronic devices, and it's almost as big of a battle with the parents as it is with the kids to change the whole family structure. You have to. If I'm reestablishing dominance with the parents and taking away what's created the problem for the past 5 or 10 years, which is what these electronic devices have, they're basically a mind control device. Those of us that are awake know that. We know what the colors and the flicker rates and all of these and Grand Theft Auto has been one of the worst training devices for this newest generation. I'll be respectful with my language, but it's done nothing but train the newest generation of thugs and the other word that you can use. But yeah, I work hard to remove these things from the equation, and I can only accomplish that sometimes because the truth of the matter is the parents, the families have spent so many years, and you're dealing with oftentimes generational behavior. They demand to stay where they're at. Much of the time, some of them don't. It's very few people that are ultimately willing to make the changes that need to be made.
Well, caller, I didn't mean to overtalk Joe, but I just want to say this. This was the late 90s, the early 2000s, and in fact, even through over the last decade, I'll say. I've got a friend. His name is Jack Thompson. Now, Jack Thompson is an attorney. Actually, the bar he was disbarred, but he was disbarred for reasons which were just purely political. He's out of Florida, but he wrote a book that detailed the effects of video games, in particular Grand Theft Auto, and broadcasters like Howard Stern and others just vilified this man, and some of the reaction to Jack Thompson. He wrote a book, as a matter of fact, about the video game industry and just what the video games are doing to train our children's thinking. At any rate, he wrote a book. It's still out there. I'm trying to think of the name of it. I've got 2 copies here at my office. But having said that, I've just got to say this: the video gaming industry went after him just with both barrels. I've never seen anything as bad in terms of somebody being just vilified as Attorney Thompson, and his activism against the video gaming industry. I guess my question is this: are the video games that bad, that influencing to the children?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I will watch a 5-year-old. I watch 5-year-olds imitate what they see, whether it be on the TV. I can watch 5-year-olds grind because of what they see.
Wow.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. Sometimes it's just more than I can take. I'm just telling you that the video games, any house you can go into, they're playing Black Ops or some sort of kill video game like that, and they need that. They demand it, and it's a war if they don't get that. And it takes a long period of time to reason with some of the teenage kids. Sometimes you can accomplish reason, sometimes you can't.
I gotcha. And by the way, I apologize, Jack, if you're listening. The book Out of Harm's Way, that's Out of Harm's Way, was published back in 2005. And in fact, at the time, I had, as part of the research for the book, I had sent my underage daughter into one of the big box stores here to purchase Grand Theft Auto. And of course, they had the age disclaimers and such, which were violated, and it was done constantly, over and over again. So even I would equate it to sending a minor in to buy liquor. It just, even though it was technically against the law, the sellers didn't care, never checked age or whatever. But having said that, and that's going off a little bit on a tangent, but I did want to say that, for standing up for these children in that particular venue, he was just crushed. But so what's the answer here, caller?
Well, the answer is the parents are going to have to. Generation X, our generation. I mean, first of all, if we don't get a hold of, I don't have to. The autism rate. We all know what the autism rate. 1 in 88 kids now. We're a mentally retarded generation. This next generation, I can't imagine as parents. The answer ultimately is, and I think we are seeing some changes. The parents have to establish dominance in their house. They have to stay together. They can't. The parents cannot be hooking up with everybody else on a daily basis and think that they're going to have a home and raise these kids. We need manhood. We need manhood back in this nation. And I target the masculine approach a lot. I work to get the fathers back involved with the kids, teaching from an early age. I work to get these families led by the fathers out into doing real things, whether it's PA fishing game or whatever outdoor or whatever training, teaching, exercise that is. Parents have to stay together. That's key. And I'm seeing everywhere I drive, we're becoming slowly agrarian again. I'm seeing gardens everywhere.
That's
changes are getting made, and again, there's people like me that are we are, and whoever's listening to this phone call, we all know who's listening. There are people like me that are what's the phrase? The cog in the wheel. I can't quite remember the phrase. The cog in the wheel. We are the people that are right in here in the dirt, waking up the people that they don't want to be awoken. Hence the hospital room yesterday, waking up state workers. And, so it's slowly changing. It's not like it was 5 years ago, definitely not 10 years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, caller, I want to thank you for giving us that inside view of the state of things. Go ahead, Joe.
No, absolutely. And what you talked about, the parents being responsible, that's exactly right. And when you have a generation of parents that want to watch reality TV rather than actually live out their own reality, and reality TV is not even reality, and that seems to be more important to a lot of people than, spending time with their families. This is how decadent we've become as a society, and what you said is right on the money.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, caller. We really appreciate your insight and your observations. I think this is key. And as Steve Quayle says, there are no political solutions for spiritual problems, and I think that at the core of this, and the caller pointed this out, I think at the core of this is the morality of, in our sense of where do our priorities lie? It used to be God, family, but everything is just upside down and backwards.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I hardly ever hear parents talk about God or church. I mean, occasionally, what's interesting is sometimes I'll run across the kid that has that connection that they've established with God on their own. But the parents, this Generation X, it's a godless generation.
And therein lies a huge problem, I believe, in my view, when you take God out of the equation. When you take God out of the schools, and it's done purposely, you take God out of the schools, God out of the home, chaos will be the result, chaos and evil. Before we cut you loose, I just got one quick question for you. What's the worst thing you've seen in your experience working in that capacity? Something that you could share with our audience that you just, even today, that you're like shaken to the core about? What's the worst thing you've seen?
Well, I mean, you can have, on any given day, there's so many things. You can have a fictitious, you can have a 10-year-old come into your room. I mean, these are experiences, come in looking at you with a knife and a bat. You can walk into a home with, and I kid you not, with 4 kids almost walking on the ceiling, literally, and one kid trying to climb up the wall. I've seen that. What I want people to understand is these kids are dangerous, and to paint the picture, nothing against the previous interview. It was outstanding, but the picture was painted that they're sweet little innocent kids. They're not. These kids will hurt you and sometimes are killing us anywhere in America. What do you do with that? I don't know. I'm just saying that whatever catastrophe happens, whether it's an economic collapse or whatever that is, you're going to have roving bands of kids that are going to have to be dealt with.
Wow.
Yeah. There are a lot of unruly kids, but, like you said, I've even noticed some of this, that there are a few, and I would say, 25%, maybe more, 50%, that do have a connection with God that you're talking about, that are different from the average kids you would see in a school setting, we'll say.
Well, that's necessary to be sure. Caller, thank you very much for the call. We're gonna cut you loose and move on. Very interesting, man. You shared a lot of good stuff with us, and appreciate that. Right from the inside, right from the kitchen, if you will. Man.
Thank you very much.
God bless, man. Keep on, just keep on doing good work. Wow. Yeah, Joe. It's part of our. I think it's part of our culture too, where, well, it's just taking God out of school, taking God out of the family, taking the nuclear family, telling parents or telling America that it's okay to have 2 mommies and 2 daddies. It's okay. In fact, encouraging the families to go on welfare, encouraging the families to, whether you need it or not, and this is nothing against those people who are in need of it, but all of this together, it just creates the perfect storm, and the children, I believe, are are the victims as much as they are the problem, but they're the victims. So let's move on, Joe.
Okay, and yeah, you're right. They are the victims in this, and it'll be interesting to see how things play out, how they are protected in times to come. 515, we're coming to you next. You're live. Thanks for holding and your patience. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
And everything you guys talk about hits me right between the eyes. I think it was 87. I had to go to school. I had a 7-year-old boy. And I had to go to school and tell him no, they weren't going to put him on Ritalin. And I told him what Ritalin was, and at that time I had a little problem with speed myself, and I was doing a lot of Ritalin. I said, I'm not going to have it in my home. I'm sober and clean. I had a couple of years in. And I said, just for that reason alone, not to mention that my son doesn't need, which is equivalent to methamphetamine in the home. And I've since got way past that problem, but they still got my son no matter what. They took him over there to Iraq. He graduated top of his class out of 400 men in AIT. Top of his class. This guy can't even hold a job at Labor Ready. He was one of the first ones into Baghdad. I don't know what they did to him, but they destroyed his mind. And they destroyed him as a person. And then they got him on all kind of medication now. There's nothing I can do about it. He's so far gone, it's real difficult to know that war was uncalled for and what they did to him. They tried to get him at 6 or 7 years old. And right after that, about 2 or 3 years later, after they tried to get him on Ritalin, I had my nephew over, and they were playing just a game of Donkey Kong. And I heard my kid kicking the wall, so I ran in there. my nephew, who was 3 years older than my boy, was choking him out, and who just happened to be on Ritalin, and my son was almost dead. And I pulled that boy off because my son had beat him in a game of Donkey Kong. He got mad and attacked my son and choked him almost to death.
Holy cow.
You know, and I look back on our history and what I did wrong as a father, and what I had to work 2 jobs to get this household going, and how it divided me and the wife, how them shows on TV separated me and her, and I didn't think nothing of it at the time. Oprah Winfrey and all her garbage and all this television stuff. And we ended up getting a divorce, and I got a daughter that I don't even talk to, and I thought I was a good dad, you know. I used to take her to rock concerts, and how many dads do that? Punk rock concerts, of all things. I did so much wrong trying to stay close to my kids. But then the government, the television divided us so much. And, you know, I always thought, I'm never going to get a better TV. I had a 36-inch. Well, I went out and invested in a real nice TV, a real nice computer. And I started blowing these pictures up of some of these old documentaries. And people really need to look at documentaries, our old documentaries. See who's in them. See some of the most famous people in the world playing in these documentaries that are true stories. And they ain't the people you think. They're the very same people that are billionaires today. But in these documentaries, they were Waco people, they were Jonestown people. Come on, man. You know, I listened to Malcolm X last night, November 10th, 1963. Malcolm X. It's on the internet. November 10th, 1963, Malcolm X tells you the top 6 black leaders were paid by one of the richest Jews in America. The top 6 leaders met at a hotel called the Carlisle Hotel. Get this, owned by the Kennedys. You ever heard of the Bush-Carlisle group?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that, you guys?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I didn't know the Kennedys owned the Carlisle Hotel. I didn't know the top 6 leaders met there. The top 6 black leaders met there and decided to make about $800,000 each so they could pull this thing off in the South. But just, you listen to that. You just listen to what Malcolm X says. I got one other thing I'd like you guys to listen to, and that is 1965, Paul Harvey. Check that out.
Oh, yeah.
To blow you away. It's called If I Were the Devil. Maybe you guys have heard of it.
We played that on our show. We had it uploaded for a while, and then we took it down, and we got to get it re-uploaded. But
I've been looking,
that's a great.
You know, I've heard this voice before, you guys. I don't know. I don't want to say anything, but this voice, this lady you had on there tonight, sounds familiar. And if you listen, I know for a fact a lot of these shooting incidents have been hoaxed, and I'll meet with anybody and sit down and prove it to you. You know, Sandy hoax was a hoax. It was a lie. Nobody got killed there, okay? And just like Columbine, it's the biggest lie there ever was. Anybody that says it's a liar, and I'll stick my neck out because I know for a fact these things were hoaxed. Our history is a hoax. America, you guys better wake up. Go out and buy that big TV and sit down in front of C-SPAN and look at the last names of your senators. Boner, Wiener, they're laughing at us, America. And that's all I got to say.
All right, well, thanks for your call. Thanks for sharing, my friend. Interesting.
Yeah, you have a great night.
On things. We've heard these arguments before. We've heard these, and not you know.
From Sandy Hook to Columbine, I couldn't say one way or another if anybody was killed or not killed in Sandy Hook. I looked hard. I mean, there were funerals. There also were anomalies. But Columbine, from what I understand, was real.
I have no doubt.
There was the psychotropic drug element involved. There was, evil music involved.
Of course, and if there's anything behind these events, it's the dirty, once again, the dirty little secret of the psychotropic drugs. We don't have to overstate or create things out of whole cloth, and I'm very well aware of what that caller was intimating. in his discussion there concerning the actors and such. I understand that. I understand with that website that's going around, or I understand what is being said. However, I believe that there's misinformation and disinformation that's being the alternative media, which is us. And ladies and gentlemen, please listen to this and understand this. Stuart Rose was on not too long, but 2 days ago, and persons unknown attempted to put child porn on his computer. Okay? Now, there's attacks to the members of the alternative media, which is us, but we're the mainstream media now. Okay? There's also this, Joe, what would you call it? Because we've experienced it, this attack on us through misinformation, disinformation, and twisting of information. People have attempted to use our show, for example, as a platform to twist the truth, and we've got to be very careful about this. So that's all I'll say.
They do this like they twist the language, from the King James Version of the Bible to the NIV, from how they propose laws, rules, and regulations, and what they really mean versus what it says. This is one of their, I would say, their craftiness. In Daniel it says, he will magnify in his craft, I think is a quote. But this is a craft. This is an art. This is deception at its highest level as we've ever seen. But it's going to get a lot worse.
This is a craft. That statement is so important for people to understand. And ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you tune into us because you want the truth, and hopefully you trust us. There's an element of trust that I'd like to think that we have with all of you, with you, where we present information and you can count on it as being truthful. Because that's our job, and because the truth is in such short supply out there anymore. Who do you rely on? Who can you tune into? Who can you ask? And this is something we struggle with because we have sources ourselves that we have to constantly vet, to make sure that we're not getting bad information. So on a wholesale level, we don't want to be ever in a position to have you say, well, geez, can I really trust these guys? And that's one thing. We will never squander your trust. And believe me, right now there's a campaign to take us out. Not us, but the entire, campaign to take the people trying to tell the truth, take them right out.
Yeah. I don't the truth is the ultimate aim, and it's not truth of things of this earth, but it's the truth of the spiritual world, of those truths as the Lord. And
of course,
once you reach those truths, you can dissect and break down everything else around you in that context. And things change in your perception.
Right. It's important to have that relationship. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got a caller. Area code 916. Sorry for keeping you waiting. We're going to bring you on now. We got about 7 minutes left, and you have that last 7 minutes. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Well, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I'm going to read a scripture because you mentioned 7. And I'm going to read a scripture. And when he cometh, he findeth it swept and garnished. This is when the unclean spirit comes out of somebody. And he goes and taketh with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last day of that man is worse than the first. And Joe and Doug, this is a spiritual war, and I would just like to talk to the audience about what the deception, the end times, in Revelation 18, verse 23, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by their sorceries were all nations deceived, and in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints and all of them that were slain upon the earth. And if you look up the word sorcery, it's pharmakia. And I would
Correct.
And so it's a spiritual, and that's why we need to learn how to bind and loose and cast these devils out of these kids, because kids can get devils. And that guy even said that he's seen kids squirming on the walls, and that tells me that's a demonic spirit. I'm a retired firefighter, and I've seen some pretty crazy things in my 31 years. But what I found interesting as I heard the show tonight, guys, I went to 2 Kings 4, and I was thinking of Elisha. And when it says, and this is 2 Kings 4 verses 34. And when he went up, he laid upon the child and put his mouth upon his mouth, his eyes upon his eyes. Now this is a dead child. And his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. This is nothing more than total satanic influence on our kids, and I am beyond upset when I saw the video of Obama allowing an imam to speak curses to the soldiers that were killed in the helicopter that was shot down. And when I saw that with my own eyes and saw it on Fox showed it. And I'm not mad at flesh. I'm really upset at the satanic realm. And this is what it is. It's a war. I encourage all of us to really get into learning how to bind and loose, how to take authority over Satan and his minions, his foul, wicked spirits, to bind them. And, the Lord said that, don't you know that we would judge angels? Well, those are fallen angels we get to judge. So just encourage you guys and encourage all of us, stay in the Word, stay in the Word, stay in the Word, and be led by the Holy Spirit.
Well, thank you for the fantastic call and the
absolutely.
Scriptures you shared. No, that's right on the money. And we do need to understand that things are changing, and the things you referenced, the Nephilim, the giants, that's what these demons are, is what I understand. Or some of them are bound up in chains to be let loose. Some of them are what the demons of today are, even back in Jesus' time, were the children of the fallen ones, is what something that has been said and could be very true. As we know, there is darkness and evil spirits that do roam the earth constantly.
Well, and once again, this is part of the discernment process. We've got the handbook for life, and by the way, folks, we're going to have on Sunday a special program with Pastor David Langford and Steve Quayle, and yes, there will be communion on Sunday. So those regular listeners. So definitely 9 o'clock to midnight on Sunday is going to be a special spiritual program with Steve Quayle and Pastor Langford. Due to the solemn nature of the program, I have talked to Steve and then Pastor Langford and myself and Joe. We're not going to have the chat room open on Sunday. It's just not going to happen. We're just going to be in focused on prayer and the Scripture.
But it will be open Monday.
Correct. That said, I think everyone needs to really, those of you who are, look, we're fighting the spiritual battle, as you had said, as I know. We're fighting the spiritual battle as well. That's the key element here. We're seeing the physical manifestations by the militarization of our police forces. We're seeing we're seeing it in the economy, that we're the greed that's so prolific, that's going to take down, or will take down the nation. So tune in Sunday for sure, and Monday, of course, for the Steve Quayle and the Guerrilla Economist for the financial answers. So Sunday and Monday, kind of a double header, if you will. But I just want to thank Sheila Matthews for a wonderful interview, and she's a very, very, very